Hey everyone, it's the Nitty Professor. Happy Mother's Day! I thought since it was Mother's Day that this would be an appropriate day to consider the connections between knitting and mothering. So I was giving it some thought. In fact, the sermon I heard this morning touched on revolutionary mothering, and it was really cool. They touched on topics about, like the coming generation and how they are going to be called upon to fix a lot of the problems that my generation kind of screwed up, and invoked hope, which I like to view hope as a verb. I've seen some other podcasters go into this. In fact, it might be something I might try to cover in a little bit more detail. I was thinking about doing it today, but then I was like, no, it's Mother's Day, so I should cover mothering. So we'll start by considering my own mother. So here's a picture. So there's some reflections here kind of dealing with. That's sort of the norm, but in any case, so there she is. I'm not sure what I'm reflecting on. I don't know, it's the TV screen. We got TV screens, windows, all kinds of things, but there's my mother, and that's her with me when I was a lot less gray-haired. There we go. And my kids. So I'm a single mother by choice. My kids basically never had a father, and therefore when Father's Day comes along, sometimes they recall to remember me because I did it all for them. The breadwinner, the caregiver, everything in between. In any case, my mother only knew the kids for a relatively short period of time because she died when the twins were less than a year old. So, and another interesting thing about that is that she passed away on my birthday. So some people would say, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. But I look on it as that was the day that she chose deliberately to, be released from her health issues, which were many. So it was, for me, not necessarily the worst scenario in the world because she was suffering. And on my birthday, she gave me the gift of ending that suffering. So I'd be curious if any of you have also had a loved one die on your birthday. I saw running across something today, a friend of mine whose husband passed away 6 months ago, and they were talking about how it made this Mother's Day a challenge because now she's being forced into the role of a single parent, and she would rather not have that. But in any case, mothers and knitting, I think, have a lot of connections. So I wrote some notes down here. For one thing, and of course, when I say knitting, right, it applies to all kinds of crafting. Learning how to craft from your mom. So I have memories of learning how to craft from my mother. Now, I didn't learn knitting specifically. In fact, I think I've mentioned this before. I'm not even sure to what extent my mother was a knitter. She was more of a crocheter, but what she was mostly was a sewist and an embroiderer. So she did embroidery and she did needlepoint. I remember we used to trade notes a lot on needlepoint projects, and she went through this phase. I have very vivid memories of her doing Bargello in particular because by the point in time when she was doing that, I was a teenager, and obviously my memories are a bit more detailed than when she made the Halloween costumes for me and my sister. And when we were really young, she used to dress us up alike because we were a year and a half apart. And I'm not sure to what extent we really appreciated it back then, but now we do have a lot of cute pictures from back in those days when my mom went to a lot of trouble to make very similar outfits for us, even though we were different size. But learning those crafts from your mother is such a touching, fond memory for a lot of people. Not everyone, obviously, but for me, it was. And knowing that she learned those crafts from her mother, and that our grandmother on my dad's side also passed down those crafts to us, all three of us. And another thing that comes to mind is the artifacts left behind. So now I have very few of those left because obviously my mom died 24 years ago. So things, they don't last forever, which to me makes them all the more special. In fact, my sister and I were having interesting debate the other day, which I want to get her on this channel because we were talking about art and its audience. So for example, the outfits that my mother made for us were definitely designed to be seen. And, you know, she didn't have to charge admission, right? All she'd do was bring us to church. And people would be, oh, you know, oh, your kids look so cute, you know, and you did their hair and all this kind of stuff. So that's a different scenario from a professional artist wanting to sell, you know, putting their work in a gallery that maybe a couple dozen people set foot in, and you never know if it's going to sell or not. When we craft knitted garments, I think this is the point my sister's trying to raise, is that, you know, all we have to do is wear them and we have an audience. And then we can talk about our accomplishment. So that's a kind of a cool thing. Naturally, we're not getting rich off of it, but maybe there's another kind of wealth that goes along with that. And the wealth in just that tradition of something that's handed down from your ancestors, that is a part of your family's history, maybe even your cultural history, your geographical history, that can be really, really powerful. And it's something I address in my novels, and it's something I could probably work a little bit harder at. So it comes through, but I could see going into that a little bit more in my narrative. What else do I have here? When you teach your kids to craft. So here's an example. I definitely shared crafting with my kids to the extent that I had time for, as the mother/father. We were pretty busy. But here's something that my daughter did. So she kind of, I think she just whipped this off. I remember getting the yarn for her in Personal Threads Boutique in Omaha, where she lives. And I think the pom-pom needs a little bit of reinforcing here. I should do that for her. But isn't it cute? It's darling. It's really nice yarn. It's beautiful wool. And just got just a basic rib stitch going on here. It's really soft and cuddly, kind of a bulky yarn. She has more hair than I do, so she needs a bigger hat, but yeah, she did a good job. So she knits on occasion. She's a big sewist. I'll try to get her on here again too at some point. For a while she was even doing like bridal gowns and stuff like that. My cowlick is showing. Woohoo! Very talented sewist. And right now she's really not doing a whole lot with it, but I've encouraged her to go into business so that she can make money off of it. I think she could. She used to do the costumes for her theater productions, and apparently she had something, an award of some kind that she's supposed to pick up post-mortem. After all that, I'm gonna have to ask her if she did that. But I have a whole bucket of crafts that she did, and we did. Back then, I wasn't specifically a knitter. I was more of a needle pointer and a kind of thread cross stitcher. And I know she has some half-finished projects. We also did the rug hooking, latch hook rug making. I did that with my son as well. And he did a couple of projects. And for a while, he really enjoyed that. And it, connected us. I think connection, that's one of the things that was brought out to me today. I was watching another video that I might kind of delve in a little bit more, which regarded the necessity of doing art, any creative making now as an antidote to what the podcaster called a world on fire. That her basic argument was that how could you not do art when the world's on fire? Because it's the best thing you could do. So I want to explore that topic a little bit more. But it does relate to mothering, passing the crafts on, teaching your kids things like self-care, things like wellness, creativity. And another thing that this is something that I've studied a lot, and I probably should go into more too, is just the very notion of agency, that you have control over your actions, that you have it within you to create things, to change the world around you in a positive way, to leave a legacy. That all ties in with agency. And when we teach our children, or when our mothers teach us to craft, to knit, to crochet, whatever it is, that's one of the lessons that they're giving us. They're also giving us lessons that have to do with wellness, that have to do with eschewing all of the commodified messages that are constantly bombarding us, that we're only worth something if we buy something that's some factory made. And now it's not just a factory, but it's a robotic factory that runs in the dark with AI. So virtually no human agency goes into, like, the majority of things that we bring into our homes, use and wear on a daily basis, and it just separates us from our very humanity. But when we do this, we're reclaiming it. When we teach our kids to do that, we're reclaiming our humanity. We're reclaiming the kind of people that we were meant to be. We were meant to be makers. We were born with brains and hands to create and make things with. And teaching our children that lesson so that they can spend just a little bit of time off of their phone and a little more time in connection with the earth, the materials that we find on the earth, and with each other through, exchanging, wearing, giving, receiving, all of that stuff. We're just being more human, and it's a beautiful thing. What else do I have on here? Obviously, mothering is stressful. Yeah. I remember one time, you should share some of your horror stories. We were in Walmart one time, and my young son was bawling because he wanted a Star Wars toy. And I was like, no, dude, you're not getting that. You don't need that, right? I'm trying to get him away from the materialism and stuff. And he pitched a fit, and so he just ran out of the Walmart store before I could even come after him. I think that was before I had my hips replaced. So we had to do a code Adam. And a store worker, a very brave, kind store worker, brought him back inside, kicking and screaming, and reunited us. But that's just typical, right? That's like the kind of stress. I'm, parading around in Walmart with 3 kids. I remember one time we got in trouble because we bought a whole box of donuts. And obviously we were just going to pay for it on the way out. So I was like, well, let's just dig in. And they thought we were stealing them. I was like, no. We're paying for them. We just preemptively ate a couple. What the heck? So in any case, stress, right? It's your kid gets sick, they barf in the bed, etc. So you need that downtime. Knitting gives you a connection with yourself, an opportunity to just escape for a few minutes from, dare I say, the drudgery. Not that we don't do it with love, right? We take care of our children. We would do anything for our kids. But on occasion, we need to do something for ourselves because it gets a little overwhelming, especially when you have twins. And then another thing is to just have like an antidote, to all the diaper changing and the nurturing. And in a way, I kind of envied my kids a little bit during that age. Another point that I learned this morning during the sermon that I heard, the homily, was that kids change us. We learn so much from them. And watching them undergo all that self-development and going through that with them is in itself like a totally creative endeavor. So the more time we can spend together, teaching them, doing things with them, crafting with them, instead of just sending them off with their phone somewhere, obviously, the better it is. So I think that about covers all the things I have on my little list. Getting away from buying things, I'm sure I mentioned that. But I just thought it'd be a nice opportunity to celebrate motherhood, regardless of whether you just experience motherhood from, having been someone's child, or you are mothering your own children, or maybe you're just mothering pets. My son mothers his dog, fathers his dog, I should put it that way. So that's like, my son's kid is his dog. I always tease him, I'm like, that's my granddog, you gotta let me spoil her. But that's kind of what I had for today. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on the connections between mothering, motherhood, knitting, crafting, crocheting, any stories that you'd be willing to share with us that relate to these points. And most of all, I just want to wish you a really happy Mother's Day. And here's to another year of mothering. My kids are in their 20s, but they still need me. And I was really touched when my younger son called me an hour or two ago, and I got to chat with him and receive his greetings. And he promised me that he's sending me something. So I have something yet to look forward to that's still connected with Mother's Day. So on that note, wish you all a wonderful Mother's Day, and we'll talk soon. Bye.